The text on a website is probably the most essential part of any website, and it's often the most overlooked feature. In my experience, one of the biggest mistakes I encounter is developers not implementing font correctly. I mean, in a way, I get it. In the world of web development, we spend so much time trying to build things. We want to build animations, pages, forms, and all sorts of components. However, correctly implementing text on a website can be the difference between having a successful site and a site that no one will ever see. Welcome to the second part of the HTML series. In this video, we're going to extend the HTML series and write text correctly. We are going to turn this into this. Let's start by looking at the code that we wrote in the last video. And I'm also going to start the live server. The title element is the first piece of text that is on every HTML page. Imagine the title element very similar to the chapter of a book. Chapter names are concise and informative, and it tells you a lot about what you're about to read. The title element is located in the head, meaning that it is metadata that is being sent to the browsers. And so let's open up the head and add the title, and we'll say that it is my HTML page. There isn't a rule to how long a title should be, but generally speaking, if you keep your title to between 50 to 60 characters, then it will display correctly in the majority of search engine results. Now that we have our basic structure, let's add some text to the web page. The most basic way to add text to a web page is by using the paragraph tag. Let's go ahead and create a new file, and I'm going to call it paragraphs.html. Let's go ahead and copy the basic document structure and paste it and replace title with paragraphs. Now, we learned in the last video that if we go to the URL and replace the information after the slash with the file name, that you'll see the latest. And we can confirm that because the browser tab has the latest title information. Like we mentioned in the last video, the body contains all the contents that are going to be the visual elements to the HTML. So let's add a paragraph tag by starting a p tag, and let's just add information in here. As soon as I press save, you'll see that the browser updates the information with the latest paragraph tag. Now, technically, you don't need the paragraph tag. You can just add text here, but what we're wanting to do is add a paragraph tag as a structural element to the HTML page. We will go over styling paragraph tags in the CSS series, but by default, browsers recognize the p tag and will apply default styles to it, as well as add margin to the paragraph tag. HTML is not whitespace sensitive, which means that inside the code, it doesn't really care about spaces. So if we were to actually add some additional spacing and write some more text, then you'll see that everything's still on the same line. You can break up these two different sections in one of two ways. The first is by wrapping each one inside of a new paragraph tag. So if I were to actually close off this sentence with an ending paragraph tag and start a new one here, now you see that they're on two separate lines. Now, like I mentioned, browsers are going to add margin and styling by default because they recognize the p tag. So that's what this extra white space is right here. The second way that you can break these into two different lines is by just adding the br tag, which means breaking line. The usage really depends on what you are trying to achieve. If you want to move a piece of text to a new line, then use the breaking tag. But if you need a new paragraph, then use a p tag. In this case, let's keep one paragraph tag and use the breaking tag to break the text into two lines. But we're not always going to want to just write paragraphs. Sometimes you're going to want to add headings. Now, headings are a great way to break up content and give it structure. HTML has the tags h1 to h6 for different levels of headings. There are a few rules you should follow when working with headings. The first one is each heading should have an opening and closing tag. The second one is you should use headings as titles on a specific section in your website. Third one is each HTML page should only include one h1 tag. And finally, each heading should be used consistently throughout your website. Generally speaking, h1 tags should be very similar to the information in the title. In fact, it is incredibly common to copy the information for both tags. The h1 tag should give information to the user about what the page is about. An h2 tag should give more information about major sections in a website. From there, h3 to h6 tags are a little bit more flexible, but they should still follow the rules that we listed earlier. So let's create a new file, and let's call it headings.html. I'll first copy all the information from the document structure, paste it into the new headings document, and let's create new headings 1 through 6. Let's also update the title to just say headings. Now, if we go to our browser and replace paragraphs.html with headings, we'll see our latest results. Let's say this web page is about headers. I can then change the content inside of my h1 tag to say headers. Now I'm telling both search engines and users who visit this web page that they are looking at a page about headers. Next, I want to determine what I want to talk about on this page. On this page, I want to give a short description, and I want to talk about guidelines for using headlines. So in here, let's take advantage of the two major sections, and we'll give one as a description, and then we'll create another second heading and call it guidelines for using headers. We can then add more information in the description by adding a paragraph tag and writing the same information that W3 Schools has. For the guidelines for using headers section, we can actually use list. Now, we want to add a list of information into the guidelines section. You don't want to write the guidelines in a paragraph format. I mean, you could, if we were to go into the H2 section for guidelines for using headers, paste in our rules, we could wrap each one inside of a paragraph tag. But this isn't really the proper way to make lists in HTML. Instead, what we want to do is create a bulleted list for each rule. The two most common lists are ordered list and unordered list. Ordered lists make a bulleted list in numerical format. To make an ordered list, you wrap your entire list inside the OL tag, and each list item is created by writing an LI tag. So let's go ahead and replace all the P's with LIs. And let's make sure we also update our closing tags. Now, as I mentioned, an order list creates the list in numerical format. So notice that it's already adding for us 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we can actually remove the number in each list item. This is convenient because you can move around list items and HTML will automatically recognize the order of each item. So if I were to move this one to the second list item, press save, then you'll see that it automatically updated to the second position in the list. The second most common is the unordered list item. Unordered list items work similarly to ordered list items, except each list item is marked with bullets instead of numbers. You can use unordered list items by wrapping the list items with the UL instead of the OL. In this instance, I prefer to use the unordered list items. Sometimes you'll want to emphasize text by italicizing text. If we go up to the description, then we can emphasize the word want by wrapping it inside an EM tag. And we can see the results in the website where want is now italicized. You may come across the tag I, and you'll see that the text is still italicized. I was the old way on how to implement italics. It is no longer commonly used because italics gives the impression of styling, where emphasize gives more the impression of structure. So let's replace this back with EM. Sometimes you'll want to bold some text. The most common way to bold something is by wrapping the word inside the strong tag. You may come across some instances of the tag B, which also bolds text, but like the I tag, it is no longer common for the same reason of strong giving the impression of structure. Let's look at a live example on how W3 Schools uses the different text formats. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the view page source. I pulled up the view page source so we can also look at the code while we look at the web page. Now, if we look through the code and we actually do a search for H1 tag, then you'll see that right here we have HTML tutorial. And they added some more classes inside of here to give some styling, but we'll go over that inside the CSS portion. But notice that there's only one result for an H1 tag, and that is the HTML tutorial. If we were to look for H2 tags, then you see that they have easy learning with HTML. They have another section for HTML examples, and even more with like HTML exercises. Notice that these are all just major portions of the web page. If I were to look for H3 tags, then notice that this section right here has another title, and they're using the word example. And you can see how they use heading tags to kind of just break out different sections of the website. If you look through the code, then you'll see that there are a lot of P tags for the different paragraphs. So if we were to just copy this text and look for it, then you'll see that each one of these is a different paragraph tag. Notice that all the text looks very different than from the text that we wrote inside of our HTML page. And this is because you can style all the headings and all the paragraphs. So don't choose a heading based off of the size of the font. That's one of the more common mistakes that I see, is that people want this size font, so they'll use an H1 tag, or they'll want this size font, so they'll use an H3 tag. So now that we have a basic understanding of how to add text to HTML documents, let's actually go to the file without text.html file, and let's implement text correctly. I'm also going to go to the file without text tags.html so we can see our latest results. So let's start off with the first one. The first thing that we're going to want to do is update our title tag, and we'll put resume. See that it got updated there. Now next we'll want to add an H1 tag. Now we're only going to want to implement one, and let's make it this resume. Now let's determine some of the major sections of this website. And so we can implement the H2 tags. So inside of here, let's go ahead and make this contact info a major section, and we'll make the education section major information. We'll go to languages. Scrolling down, let's go ahead and add this profile, work history, professional skills, and interests. Now, I didn't put this inside of an H2 tag because it's not really a new section, and there's going to be times whenever you often come up into text like this where it's like, should I put this inside of another section or not? And this I actually think makes more sense inside contact info. So let's actually go ahead and move that into the contact information. Now, here it makes a little bit more sense for us to have name, job title, email, phone, and LinkedIn information. So let's actually wrap this inside of a paragraph tag. And then, like we mentioned, BR is going to break up and add new line breaks. So we'll copy that and paste it at the end of each line. And then from here, let's go ahead and add the strong tag to each one of these. And I'll add an emphasis tag to the job title. Now, whenever we scroll down to the education section, we'll see that we have the university name, degree, and graduation. And so we could do the same thing that we did over here by wrapping this inside of a new strong tag. But if you had like multiple degrees, for instance, then you don't really want to add university name around a strong tag every single time. So let's actually put this around an H3 tag. And we can do the same thing to the second section. And then we can just add the strong tag to the degree portion and the graduation year. And let's just copy that and paste it down here. And we see over here that we need to add a breaking tag. So let's add that breaking tag right here and wrap this inside of a paragraph tag. And we'll do the same thing to the second option. Now, if we scroll down to the languages section, then we see that we have a list of languages that we know. Now, typically, I wouldn't want to do this as an ordered list, but for practice, let's go ahead and create this as an ordered list. And I'm going to start my first list item. And then you'll see that the order list item appears in languages. And then inside the profile, I'll wrap all of this inside of a paragraph tag. And then I'll start a new paragraph on my second paragraph. So let's go down to the work history. Very similar to the style that we had inside the university. What we'll want to do is have this first section as an H3 tag. So to indicate that we are giving it an individual section. So let's go ahead and do H3. And here's another one. Now remember that how I said HTML is not white case sensitive, and whenever you see that I'm indenting things, this isn't really for the browsers, but spacing is just really more of a way for developers to have a better way to organize their code. Now inside of each work history, I can create a new unordered list. And let's go ahead and copy this, create a new list item, and copy that text. Let's copy this, and we'll replace the other two and get rid of this extra white space. And now you'll see that our work history has H3 tags and bulleted items. And we can do the same thing inside of our professional skills by creating an unordered list. And then if we go into the interest, the final section, we can wrap this inside of a paragraph tag. So now we've implemented text onto a new file correctly. Now there are more text elements that you can use to add more structure to your HTML documents, but these are the most common ones that you'll come across. And like I mentioned at the beginning, this may seem very basic, but applying text correctly is one of the most common issues that I come across. I have links in a PDF down below in the description so you can review and study the information of what we went over today. If you have any questions about anything that we discussed today, then please leave a comment down below. I do try to get back to everybody. In the next video, we're going to go over how to add images inside the HTML document. I really hope that you're enjoying this journey to becoming a front-end developer, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.